Hello everyone, my name is Maciej and welcome to Awesome to Know podcast where we discuss all things WordPress. My today's guest is Dave Lockie, who brings in 15 years of experience in WordPress and 5 years in crypto. Dave joined earlier this year as Web3 lead in Automatic. This conversation will be a little bit different from the previous ones because we center our discussion with Dave around Web3 concepts and fundamentals and what it means for broader audience. We will also discuss where in this picture Automatic fit in and what to expect in the space in the future. Without further ado, please enjoy my conversation with Dave Lockie.
Hey everyone, it's good to have you here. We're glad you decided to tune in for this episode of the Awesome to Know podcast.
Thank you very much for the intro, Dave. And you mentioned you are into crypto already 5 years, and I wanted to ask how crypto or Web3 found you. So how come you are into this already for 5 years?
So the story is that one morning I got to work. So I used to run a WordPress agency, and I think probably at the time we were about 20 or 30 people, something like this. I came into the office pretty early one morning, and there was already a developer there, a guy called Nick, and he was looking at a chart on his screen, and it looked a bit like New Relic. I don't know if you've seen like that or similar application performance monitoring software where they show you like what's the overall performance for your system and what's database, what's application, etc. And I was like, oh, cool. Is that one of our sites? Like one of the sites that we're looking after? He's like, oh no, that's my ETH miner. I was like, you're what? And he was mining Ethereum. And I had heard of Bitcoin before, of cryptocurrency, but I hadn't really ever paid much attention to it. It was only when it was sort of put right in front of me like this that I guess I made the connection between what we do with the internet all day and the fact that this was like money. And I could I suddenly just like perceived that this was a thing that was not going away. I mean, this was like a pretty sophisticated bit of, remote control equipment to mine this cryptocurrency. And I was like, wow, I mean, this is like, this is not a fringe thing anymore. This is here and now. And on thinking about it more, it just made so much sense, having seen how the internet has disrupted everything about what came, human civilization and institutions that came before. It just made sense that it would eventually disrupt money as well. And it really went from there. I just became pretty obsessed with it for like 18 months. Then I was busy doing other stuff, especially around COVID and everything like that. And then my attention returned to it with a vengeance, I guess, towards the end of 2020. And yeah, I just really haven't looked back since.
All right. And so let's unpack this concept of Web3 a little bit more for our listeners who maybe are not yet familiar because it's a very vast, space. So many things going on, so many like pillars on which Web3 is sitting. So can you unpack this concept for us a little bit?
Yeah. And I'll start off by saying that I don't think Web3 is well defined. If anything, it's a successful rebrand of what used to awkwardly be called kind of blockchain and crypto stuff. Now we've got this sort of somewhat more awkward basket of Web3, blockchain and crypto. And I actually have a slightly different take on what Web3 is about than the common use case. But let's first talk to how I think it's generally used when talking to crypto technology. So we can imagine that cryptocurrency and blockchain is the foundational technology, and Web3 is the set of use cases and applications and functionality that it enables. So this is everything from smart contracts and decentralized applications to decentralized identity, to decentralized finance, to the portability of personal data, the composability of data across different applications. It expanded to become like quite a wide set of things. And as much as something, I think it's a vision for a post-Web 2 paradigm of the web. So Chris Dixon from Andreessen Horowitz defines it as the Web 1 was read-only, Web 2 is read plus write, Web 3 is read plus write plus own. So it's, I think, at its core about being able to contribute and participate in both the underlying protocols and the applications from a user and an ownership perspective without permission. So it's breaking down the silos of tech giants and instead giving us a different option to collaborate, to coordinate, and to build value together, where that is done very much along the principles of open source. So Web3, I guess, adds to open source the concept of open state, which is that public blockchains always, by necessity, show the state of the chain at any given point in time as well. So it's like if open source is the recipe for a cake, but we all download the recipe, we all make the cake, and we end up with slightly different versions of the cake. Open state is watching the cake being built. We end up with one cake and it's the same cake at the end of the day. And I guess we can kind of think maybe a better analogy is like WordPress or other open source software. So you can download it into different environments and it might behave slightly differently. You might need this module turned on in this web server, or this module turned on in a different web server. So there is sort of a slightly different result of that software being downloaded. With Web3, it runs on-chain, and it runs not only in a singular way, but in a way that everyone can see, can verify, and can interact with. So it's like a shared runtime for the web, which is obviously not useful for all applications, but definitely seems interesting for quite a few.
Yeah, and this started with blockchain. So this was like the first building piece that enabled technology and this ownership. And then Web3 was built on top of it. I think the term was coined in roughly around 2015. And more concepts are joining Web3. So it's not only like currency ownership enabled by technology, but also there's art and ownership of a different sort, like, for example, tokens that can be treated as limited access to given resources.
Scarcity or uniqueness can be sort of verified in a decentralized way.
Yeah, and I see this as so many like building blocks, Web3 as a movement, let's say, as a like a gathering of different concepts and technologies, so that if you want to grasp the concept, it's so difficult because there are to really understand it. It's like it's parallel world where, in order to understand this, you not only need to understand the basics, but to see the whole picture and what are those building blocks. And because otherwise, it's like a cross section that is only like a very small piece of this world. So. Again, for our listeners, what are, because you laid out the fundamentals, right? So this is right now, it's not only consuming and creating content, but also owning it through, technology enabled means. So what are the other building blocks? Like if you can lay out, the whole palette of the pieces.
Well, that's a pretty big job. You've got, starting with the basics, you've got the concept of an identity being tied to an address on chain. So this is all sort of a cryptographic network. And for it to be a public permissionless system, so anyone that has an address is opted into the rules of the chain. You can't break the rules of the chain. And if you're operating on that chain, then you can participate in an open permissionless way. And that address can be controlled by a person or by some software, and it can interact in ways that are concordant with the rules of the network. So with some chains, that's pretty much limited to sending and receiving amounts. So changing the ledger, the shared ledger, to reflect a change in balances associated with a particular account on chain. Then you've got the idea of transactions between those parties. So that's an interaction between those identities. And then you've got so that was essentially Bitcoin, right? Is being able to send and receive across a public permissionless system to transact value, this arbitrary value. Ethereum extended that concept to include a more, like a fuller version of, forget the term now, to be programmable, essentially. Turing complete, I think, is the term that I'm looking for. Yep. So a far more Turing complete compute platform. And the founders of Ethereum saw that we could take these same concepts and use them to also run shared programs. That in turn just enables a whole bunch of different use cases. So you can write a program and run it in a shared runtime in ways that are in accordance with blockchain's characteristics, which are immutable, public open record, publicly verifiable, immutable, all of these things. Then you create particular characteristics which are useful for some programs. So for example, smart contracts can let you mint your own token. So on top of the Ethereum network, you can create your own coin. That has particular utility or security value. It's useful in different ways. Those can be fungible tokens, so they could be like a type of currency, a type of money, or they could be a non-fungible token, which is more like a piece of art or the representation of something that is unique or scarce on chain. So if I have an NFT that represents ownership of a particular piece of art, I can send that to you and it doesn't need to go through an art broker or any other third party. That's pretty cool. But we also ended up with taking a look at the traditional finance system and saying, well, are there ways that we could do this without having to have a centralized third party in the way? So if I want to exchange one currency for another currency, or I want to borrow money, or I want to lend money, are there ways to do that without market makers that sit in the middle? And that was, I guess, the fuel for the most recent market cycle in crypto, which was DeFi and all of the things that then enabled. The idea that you can get onto a network in a permissionless way, and you can then use that address, that wallet, that identity to interact with different programs. So you can use it to sign that you own that wallet, and that serves as then some sort of identity. You can store data in there, whether that's a ledger balance of a currency asset or like a non-fungible asset, or even just storing data on that address. That's all within your direct control, and you can't get your account suspended by, an anonymous corporation that's out of your control. So, yeah, sorry, a bit of a rambling answer, but that was a pretty hard question.
Yeah, okay. I admit this that this is not easy answer, easy question to answer because of the vastness of the space. But thank you very much for this historical overlook, because this is I'm asking this question because Web3 is very complex concept, and the learning curve is very steep because it's like parallel world where you have so many building blocks you can get interested with, where every financial instrument is onboarding in DeFi or in any other financial platforms, that if you want to learn about what's Web3, there are so many concepts that are thrown at you that you don't know where to start. And in let's say not real world, but this traditional world we live in, you're not interested how bonds are working unless you have a need, or how loans are working unless you have a loan, because you don't need to. And in Web3, the whole package is thrown at you with everything that's already possible there. So this is very, very complex. But thank you very much for laying down the fundamentals. And with this bit of a background, I wanted to ask you, because you are Web3 lead at Automatic, right? And I wonder, how did it start for you, and what are you trying to build or change or, achieve with this role at Automatic?
Sure. Do you mind if we just reflect on what you just said, and then we'll move on to what I'm doing at Automatic? Is that okay?
Sure.
So I definitely agree. Web3 can be a rabbit hole, and it kind of goes as deep as you want to follow it down. I'm not sure that actually any different from the internet generally, though. I think the key thing to remember is that the internet and the web and crypto are all built on open protocols and open standards. And they are technically, socially, even philosophically complex issues. And nobody understands it all. The internet is an artifact so complex that no one can understand it. It just is this
True.
Crazy, fractally complex thing. And you can look at it from any particular axis and really nerd out. And follow the rabbit hole. And indeed, much of our economy is oriented towards doing that, to understanding the social impact of the internet, social media, marketing, data collection, all the technical parts, how do we make the internet faster, or what are the security risks and how do we mitigate them? These are questions which employ many of the world's smartest people today. And it's the same with crypto. You can go extremely deep if you want to, or you can just use the applications. And so most people would not go to a command line, would not use that to send an email. And so over time, corporations created easy ways for people to do this, right? So webmail was really the explosion of email, because suddenly people outside of a business, outside of a business that could employ somebody who was an IT administrator who understood these fundamentals and could provision accounts, anyone could sign up for webmail, anyone could start using it. Did they understand POP3 and SMTP and email protocols? Did they even have a concept that there were protocols that were open that underlaid these systems? No, they just had a way to communicate that was real time, had a perfect memory, was shared, all of these characteristics. So it's the features and benefits that drove adoption. Right now, crypto and Web3 is in a transitioning phase where we see signs of projects and companies taking the raw underlying technology and just building it into seamless user experiences. So a good example of that is Reddit, who recently launched their own NFT collection. And that is, that is proper crypto. They are NFTs on the Polygon chain. It might be their own side chain, I'm not totally sure. But they didn't tell people these were NFTs. They're digital collectibles, and they made the user experience very easy. Like, you didn't have to, they took you through the process of setting up your digital wallet. And they're not talking about cryptocurrency accounts, they're talking about digital wallets. And so we're starting to see the successful abstraction of all the complexity that lies below. And the majority of people will never need to understand what happens below. But there still needs to be this layer of people who do understand and who do fight for the preservation of the open protocols and standards and the networks that sit beneath. So yes, I totally agree. Web3 is a wormhole, and definitely a mind worm. I don't think I've ever found anything that has been so sort of comprehensively brain melting. But most people won't interact with it at that layer. They will just interact with the projects or the experiences which offer them features and benefits which are different to, in complement to, or unavailable anywhere else.
I love this analogy of email account or email client sending and receiving emails, because this is like an abstraction layer of user experience to do this seamlessly and in a convenient way.
Yeah.
And this is also interesting on another level because security level, because with crypto you own, like, most of the time you own something, right? So whether it's a token, a crypto, or, digital money, right?
Yep.
And you have to protect it. And if you are not, I think there was some kind of a lag. So, I like this concept because of the second aspect of it, not only a user experience, but also from the security perspective. Because if you are on a blockchain, you own something most of the time, whether this is a crypto or NFT. In email, you own your emails. So there is that centralized space on blockchain. This is your wallet and a wallet address. You have to protect it. And in your example, there is that mailbox you have to protect against, attacks. And in both examples, you have to be aware of what's going on, not to open your, emails from phishing emails or fend off any attacks. More and more it's protected automatically with spam filters and so on, security. But this is, I like this concept because people take it for granted that you have to protect your email, and there is a huge discussion about, okay, but this is so insecure, not secure concept. You have to protect your money, whereas in the bank you don't have to. Whereas you still have to protect your a card, or debit card, or credit card, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and this is something that I've been thinking about a fair bit and wanted to talk about today, which is this idea of self-sovereignty or sovereignty online. And we're talking as Twitter seems to be melting down. Maybe Elon will figure out a way to keep it all running. But I had an interview recently where somebody who was very senior at Twitter basically said that nobody understands how to reboot Twitter now. It's got so complex that if it went down, it might just be irrecoverable. And so that's another example of a system that's so complex that no one person can understand it. And I don't think what we've experienced. Yeah, so there's this explosion of the internet, right, where people figured out how to take extremely complex technology and abstract it to user experiences that made sense for people. And the only way that was possible for the majority of the people, the majority of the time, was for people to cede control to the geeks. We trust Google, we trust Microsoft, we trust whomever to provide our email, but that wasn't the end of it. Like over time, that trust has snowballed into actually, we trust them with our identity online. So, and you can see this at the edges sometimes, like these companies have to deal with so much that occasionally you get like false positives. So you get the guy that gets locked out of his Gmail account for sending a picture of his child's skin condition to his doctor, which gets flagged as CSAM, and his Google account gets locked. But of course, these days your Google account isn't just Gmail, it's potentially like all your documents, it's your logins to other services. At that point, you realize the importance of sovereignty. If you're reliant on a third party, a faceless corporation to be responsible for your identity online, then that's a heck of a lot of trust. And I'm not saying that these companies don't deserve that trust. Most of them invest an incredible amount of money and effort and genuine care in earning that trust every day, every microsecond. But I don't think we've yet seen the swing the other way. Let's say Twitter fails and suddenly people's social networks and information sources have fallen apart. Let's say something else bad happens to a centralized service provider that actually undermines trust. We saw a little bit of that stuff with what Snowden's revelations could have been, like deep nation state surveillance. And so I do believe there's going to be a swing back to where people want to take, or at least want to have like a solid option to regain sovereignty at some degree for their online presence and identity. And I'm not saying that has to be crypto based, but I do think whether it's through domain name, whether it's through a different system, there is value to individuals who want to be able to move, to change, to be flexible, and not to get locked out of, critical services or information, to be able to do so. And there are businesses that are set up to do that. I'm thinking like, Proton is a privacy-centric business. There are privacy-centric businesses set up, but businesses always have to be located within a nation state, and they always have to be subject to the laws of that nation. And the 21st century has shown us how volatile politics can be and how fast things can change. And one thing that compels me around crypto and Web3 is the idea that actually we can build systems which transcend nation states, that are verifiably open and accessible. I think it is important to acknowledge how much trust and how much ignorance we have accepted in return for convenience and ease. And perhaps it's, I think for a lot of people, whether it's in the US or the UK or whether it's in Vietnam or Angola, the option to opt out but still be a citizen on the internet, still do the things that you need to do to communicate, to collaborate, to earn a living, to control your finances. Having a different system is just perhaps necessary for some people in some situations, and be a good way to to create space for more options for more people. And I think that naturally serves as a bit of a check and a balance towards this sort of centralization of power in a handful of like insanely complex, important businesses.
Yeah, and on this note of the identity, like being sure, or rather, effort of impersonation. I think I got this wrong, but what I wanted to give as an example, and very recent one is, that the revolution that's happening at Twitter, where you can buy for $8, a bluebird, and, all of those, meme accounts created impersonating big corporations, stating dumb stuff like free medicine, or not, like Lockheed Martin, for example, not selling to the United States unless this and this and this. And, this affected the stock price immensely. Yeah. And there were I think $billions in dollars of lost value in those corporations. So a meme account, troll account, just for fun, created, and it has a huge impact on people who don't, for example, double check or research the news, right? It's crazy, and with technology enables this kind of behaviors, and this only shows how much power a central business has, which is a news platform, and maybe not even a news platform, but a space impacting millions of people. And we can see how much of an impact can it make on huge businesses. It's not small business, it's huge business. So this concept of being able to say that you are who you are, prove it, and
identity, trust verification, the ability to do
exactly
that stuff independently, even if most people don't do it, the fact that some people will always value it and want to do it, and be able to use that to shine a light on truth, I think is just a fantastically important idea. I'm going to give my automatic teammates a shout out here so over at Tumblr, you can also spend $8 a month and you get 2 check marks.
I saw this action.
They similarly do nothing useful. So, and Tumblr's a nicer company. So, nice. You should come and pay Tumblr $8 a month.
2 in price of 1. Yeah. But speaking of,
I'm going to jump back in and continue this, because I think you're just putting on a really interesting thread here, which is around trust and verification and identity. And to my earlier point, I see Web3 as slightly different, as it's not just adding crypto into Web2. For me, Web3 is more about what happens. So I think of Web1 as desktop computer, Web2 as smartphone, and Web3 I think is going to be, we'll know when we're Web3 when it's more off-screen, right? You can still access and contribute to the web without staring at your phone screen, walking down the road. So maybe it's augmented reality glasses or earphones. Maybe it's VR for gaming and learning and work. Whatever it is, I think it's that more ambient expression of the web, and that's really where I think the environment changes. So we can look at historic precedents for this. So with eBay, people suddenly realized that they needed a payment platform that was fit for purpose for the internet, and that's what gave PayPal its massive boost. Suddenly you could pay for something straight away rather than having to send a check through the mail, wait for them to cash it, etc. And I think we have seen the impact of mobile phones on both payments through things like Apple Pay, but also social networks like Facebook and Twitter. And I think what augmented reality, virtual reality, ambient internet, Web3, that definition opens up is the opportunity for co-creation on a scale that co-creation within the digital realm that will take what we have now to a different level, because it will be so visual and so immediate around us. So at the moment, sure, you can sell an NFT which represents a pair of cool sneakers, but what utility does it actually have outside of a metaverse where there are 5 people? I think when you are walking down a high street or at a club and everyone is has augmentation of their natural senses, so that it has this overlay, then suddenly that pair of sneakers is visible to people, and it changes the emphasis and the importance of digital goods. And in turn, I think that makes more of the economy accessible to crypto. Because crypto is really good when you stay within the digital realm. It gets really messy when you try and connect it with real world stuff. It's definitely possible and there's value there, but it generally means that you need to move out of like the trustless, public permissionless space and into realms where there are interfaces with the real world. And inevitably those then mean connections with people and corporations. And we can see through like the history of humanity and even like the recent FTX saga, that as soon as you start introducing people and corporations and the opportunity for opacity into the mix, then, you know, sometimes the worst of people's behavior emerges. In fact, it's very predictable that it does, sadly. So I think that's where things really change. I think there's going to be lots of kind of iterative evolution from where we are now. Even before, like, you know, we're all wearing Apple glasses and Apple's even richer. But I think when that internet does roll around, then it changes a lot. So yeah, it's important, I think, when considering these sort of cutting edge technologies or trends, to skate to where the puck is going to be, not where the puck is right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I would like to take this opportunity and change gears a little bit.
Sure.
I know, speaking about talking about technology, what's like automatic place in this whole puzzle?
Fine. So I work within the payments team at WooCommerce, and WooCommerce is a business unit at Automatic. And we're starting from the perspective that we always do, which is like, what are merchants using WooCommerce trying to do? Like, what are their needs? What are their challenges? How can we help them succeed? That's ultimately what it comes down to. Even before I joined, I could go to WordPress.org, I could search for crypto, and I could see that there were crypto payment processing solutions available on the .org repo, so the publicly available open source repo, and they come with numbers of active installations, and there are at least a few there that have thousands of active installations. So these are merchants using WooCommerce that are actively, or at least have that crypto payment solution enabled. It's like an active install, right? So it's not just that they tried it, it's that last time the data was checked, like it's still activated and presumably kind of placed at checkout. So from that we can, because, you know, one of the challenges with the WordPress ecosystem is that because it's open source, there isn't the level of granularity and comprehensiveness of data collection that you would see in a platform like Squarespace or Shopify. That's sort of one of the trade-offs of being an open source ecosystem. You have to treat data as signal rather than canonical, and you have to understand like why it may not, the map might not represent the terrain. So even looking at that kind of map of activity, we could tell that there were tens of thousands of merchants using crypto on their stores. And at that point, it feels like much like if it was shipping, or it was a tax solution, or it was a multi-channel solution, there's an opportunity for Woo to partner with the people that have created those plugins and to help both them and merchants succeed. So that's where we've started off. Pretty simply, the base use case for crypto is payments, and that's our first foray into the Web3 crypto blockchain ecosystem, is to find crypto payment processing partners who have solutions with active use demand by merchants and helping both merchants and partners succeed. So pretty straightforward, actually, like distilling all of the stuff that we've talked about down to let's help merchants take payments from people that want to pay with crypto.
So it starts with the basics, right? Because this started, the space is so young that, the stuff that was invented at the very beginning, it's already mature, right? So the payments, and like money or value transfer is battle tested, like for 10 years, more or less, let's say a decade. And you can start with it and wait for, is it like, maybe this is my question, like, is it, this is the first step and you see how it goes, and then along the time, all of the other things will mature and the ecosystem will, settle a little bit and you can see what could be the next step?
Yeah, I mean, definitely one of the reasons that we wanted to offer crypto payment processing solutions is learning through participation, right? We can watch from afar, or we can partner and get involved and deal with inbound merchant support tickets. We can look at the real data that we can see when we partner, and figure out what is the ground truth of what would next best help our merchants. So perhaps it's going to be helping them to sell NFTs or use NFTs to token gate stores to prevent botting. Maybe it's going to be introducing wallet connects so that people can log into stores using Web3 wallets. Maybe it's going to be, there's a whole bunch of things that could end up being really useful to merchants, and the way that we evaluate that is through looking at what merchants are asking for. I guess automatics and WooCommerce are less in the business of market making and king making, and more in the business of helping people that are finding success to build on that success further. Remember, we're responsible for, directly and indirectly through our support of the WordPress ecosystem, through our direct customers on WordPress.com and Tumblr and WooCommerce, amongst more. We have a heavy responsibility, and so we always need to balance innovation with that responsibility and the potential disruption that comes from it. So, there's a watch and a wait and a learn and a participation angle to this. That's not to say that innovation doesn't play a role and that there wouldn't be some more cutting edge things that we decided to do. But A, those are things that I wouldn't talk about on a public podcast, and B, I think what you're interested in right now is what's our approach to participating in this space? Like, why did we choose to enter, and how are we doing that? I think it's also very important to draw a clear distinction between Automatic and WordPress.org. They often get conflated, not least by the news media. What we're talking about here is Automatic, the business, WooCommerce, the business unit, helping our direct customers on WooCommerce.com access crypto payment processing education and partners to help them grow. This is a million miles away from some of the hypey ideas like a WordPress coin or a WordPress DAO, anything like that.
Okay, so there were like those kind of ideas, because I have never heard about them, but...
Yeah. I mean, I've heard talk of those sorts of ideas for years, even before I joined Automatic. So this isn't like, these aren't Automatic ideas, these are like ecosystem ideas. And it's kind of natural that people are going to be thinking about how crypto and Web3 impacts large existing tech companies. So yeah, I just wanted to be clear about that distinction between like the open source project, where that's up to the community to figure out what to do, and Automatic, where we take a business perspective on how to operate.
Sure. Yeah, because Automatic, the business, spans it's like a consortium, right? So there are a couple of business units, not only WooCommerce, but Tumblr and other companies. And is there because I want to understand, because this is, from my understanding, this is new for Automatic to engage in Web3. It's already there for a couple of years, but do I get this right that you were the like the person who started to saying like it just first said, let's do something about this in this space? It's like missed opportunity?
No, definitely not. And in fact, I found a very old blog post talking about how you can pay for your WordPress.com services with Bitcoin. And I think that was like 2015 or something. So this is years and years ago. I am pretty sure it's safe to say that I'm the first dedicated resource in Automatic to look at this space, but there are some of the smartest people I've ever met that work at Automatic. You know, I didn't walk into a room and go, hey, have you guys heard of crypto? And everyone's like, oh, no. Wow.
No, never.
So, you know, but what I do think has changed is the organic demand that we see, the organic adoption by Woo merchants to go and do something with this. And yeah, of course, my hope is that Web3 at Automatic becomes a broader church. But to some extent, those decisions are also outside of my control. As I say, we're reacting to what our merchants want. And of course, we've got like ideas and views and hopes and plans about how that could evolve. But some of the challenges with crypto are real and, you know, very difficult to solve for. Like, you know, the fact that if you hold crypto in a non-custodial wallet, like you own the private keys, you lose the private keys, like that's, you know, your wealth and your identity lost forever. You know, that's a really big problem. A lot of the user experience stuff is problematic. A lot of the trust and privacy and security stuff is problematic for most users. So there are challenges and opportunities that are broader than anything we're able to influence. And what we want to do is to identify where there is demand and where we can add value, try to offer guidance and education to help people understand like the opportunities, the challenges, make sure that they're walking into what they're doing with eyes open. Because as we've talked about, there is like a layer of understanding what you're doing that has to be backfilled when you compare to just signing up for PayPal or signing up for Stripe. You know, there are potentially deeper implications. So yeah, I've got so many ideas, so many hopes, and I expect that we'll see more things make it onto WooCommerce.com in due course, but it's, you know, as we've seen from the last couple of weeks with totally unexpected things happening, you know, it's still an industry that has significant challenges to overcome, and the broader adoption of crypto and the like the sub-trends within that emerge are outside of our control.
Yeah, and regarding the events you're talking about, we will dig into them in a couple of minutes. But I still wanted to ask you,
sure,
because I was thinking if Automatic is engaging in Web3, hard to say movement, but you know, onto this journey, I was thinking, is there anything else Automatic is doing, perhaps apart from from this like payment approach? Because I'm thinking
nothing at this time, Maciej.
Okay. Yeah, because I was thinking maybe the philosophical approach of, you know, open source, you know, the platform that's, enabling millions of users to, build stuff on the internet, is like philosophically, aligned with Web3, let's say, ideals. I see there is a little bit of a synergy here, whereas I don't see many crypto or blockchain companies using WordPress as their first choice technology, because, you know, the applications are, you know, written in the back end, you know, this is different. And for the marketing website, I see some, but it's not like it's not like a first choice technology, whereas, it's a great CMS system. And I would be expecting more crypto companies picking WordPress as the first choice tool.
Okay, so there's a couple of bits there. I think from a values and mission perspective, there is a lot of synergy and a lot of resonance. Freedom to publish, freedom to transact, open source, communities, all of these things are very much in line. And to some extent, crypto is I see it as the natural evolution of open source to include open state and how do we take everything that's made the WordPress community so successful and powerful and good, just wholesome, positive, constructive, value creating. How do we take those principles and those ideas and expand them beyond a content management system? So yes, there are absolutely philosophical harmonies, both with WordPress and I think with Automatic as a whole. We're a remote business, we're global, we have responsibility for really important things online. There's a lot of rhyming. Those don't necessarily translate into actions. However, it's perfectly possible for those things to remain true and for there not to actually be any commercial opportunities or involvement overlap. So that's important to remember, that whilst it seems an obvious fit, we always need to take a merchant first approach and look at things skeptically and somewhat conservatively, because the responsibility that I've talked about previously,
Right.
we don't want to be at the cutting edge and then it turns out the cutting edge was cutting in the wrong direction and,
True.
and now there's a lot of drama. The second point was around, sorry, I went down that rabbit hole too far.
It's for me, it's a natural choice to use WordPress in blockchain.
Right. So the use of WordPress by crypto and Web3 businesses. Yeah, I do see a lot of it, frankly. And more we're seeing in the .org marketplace, things like Web3 wallet connectors and, NFT blocks and all sorts of different tools. There's a lot of crypto price ticker plugins, for example. Mm-hmm. So I don't have any data or any guess as to what the percentage difference or change is for crypto companies using or not using WordPress compared to any other. I guess I would say it's probably not too far away, although there are a couple of trends which are kind of interesting. One is that you see a lot of crypto websites that use is it Gitbook or something for documentation?
Oh yeah.
So because crypto projects, rather than crypto companies, crypto projects tend to be, programmatic and protocol and technical, then a lot of their website is actually focused on the technical documentation more than is marketing content. So Gitbook, I think, is probably a better fit for some of those use cases. I think where you've got the application side of things. So, even just talking about Web2 businesses, you often see that you've got the www domain and you've got the app domain and
exactly.
you run different tech stacks. And I think that if we looked at the instances where there was a separate www and a separate app dot, you'd probably see a pretty comparable percentage of uses. But of course, crypto companies are also highly technical businesses, and developers love using the latest, shiniest stuff.
Exactly, yeah.
So maybe they're using some fancy framework or the CMS at the moment, maybe they're also just building out headless WordPress because, of course, we can't always tell. In fact, we can rarely tell if we're looking at a headless WordPress instance or like a flat JavaScript front-end site or even a flat HTML site. So, yeah, I'm not totally convinced that. Well, I just don't have the data to suggest whether there is like a trend or a differential there. Yeah, but it's an interesting question for sure. And obviously, we hope that lots of crypto-related businesses will continue to choose WordPress and WooCommerce.
Yeah, let's hope for it. So would you like to tackle on the FTX collapse?
Well, I think, you know, we're recording this within the first couple of weeks after all of the insanity started, and
exactly a week after filling Chapter 11 by FTX.
So I think I wanted to talk about this because we're launching crypto payment processors on WooCommerce.com just as like all of this fraud and crime is unwinding and lots of people have lost money. And I wanted to mention it because I think not doing so would have been insensitive. There are a couple of interesting narratives that emerge, however, from this like great unwinding, which really started with like the Luna attack and depegging much earlier in the year. So it's been a pretty, like 2021 was a pretty amazing year to be in crypto. 2022, like unless you were very careful, it could have been a pretty disastrous year to be in crypto. But there are some important things, even like at this early stage, that we can learn. Excuse me, learnings that we can take away. So the first is that the actual crypto protocols weren't affected by these things. They operated as designed. They're functional. Nobody's been unable to withdraw their assets from DeFi platforms. Nobody's been unable to send Bitcoin to each other. So the pure crypto side of things, like it stands up and it works, and it is undamaged by these unwindings. Like even Luna, like the cryptocurrency, like the smart contract stuff, it did what it was meant to do. It's just that the way that it was designed turned out to be like a massive Ponzi. But that was there for people to see, and people did see it and did call it out. FTX as a business was what I'd call like Web 2.5. It was a centralized corporation governed by regulation in a nation state, and it was operated by criminals, allegedly, or what seems likely to be, people that blundered or purposely wandered into crime. In the public perception, that's always going to be tangled up with, crypto's all fraudulent and a scam. But actually, what happened here, like it used some of the tools and opportunities that crypto allows for, but it was the misuse of that by people in a corporation subject to regulations that was the problem. It was not the underlying crypto protocols and what most of the crypto industry is building for that were at fault. So I think that's important to differentiate. It's interesting to observe that even amongst this great unwind, there are businesses that seem to be unaffected by contagion, that followed regulation, that were under intense scrutiny, that suffered competitively against businesses like FTX, because they couldn't offer the sorts of products that FTX were because they're governed under US regulation, they're under that scrutiny. But the flip of that coin is that during troubled times, the work that they've put in to be compliant stands up and has protected their customers and their customers' deposits. So centralized businesses rather than DeFi and pure crypto, and also good actors versus bad actors. They're both very important things to understand rather than just seeing it as a blanket, crypto is a scam issue. And so that's why we chose to proceed with launching the category anyway, because our partners, we did due diligence to the best that we can tell. They're all unaffected by contagion so far, and I think that is sort of testament to working with partners that see the world in the same way, and to ground truthing what's on the marketing materials, and that it's more important than ever that people, merchants who are looking to start accepting crypto, understand all of the questions that they should be asking if they chose to do so.
Yeah, I think this is, just to jump in, I think this is a very tough moment for you to launch products in this kind of environment, because doing this just weeks, or I'm not sure when you will launch, but it will be weeks after FTX and the immensity, like the hugeness of the collapse. For our listeners to have a perspective, from 32 billion into zero under 48 hours. We haven't heard about anything like this ever before. It's the biggest collapse of a corporation ever. And the problem with this is that it's shining, light into the whole sector. And there's a lot of discussion about people seeing, the founder, Sam Bankman-Fried, as a how do you call it in English?
Yeah.
This is
a savant, like a genius, or
exactly, and the red flags were perceived as great example of genius behavior, like pitching in front of Sequoia while playing League of Legends. Yeah. So everyone was seeing this, but the interpretation was different. If it wasn't for a different sector, it could be, not even the case of raising funds that enabled, building the company. So my take on it is that people were blinded by the need or by the urge to believe in this as a business and positive thing, instead of what it was from the very beginning.
Yeah. I mean, look, I think there's a couple of things. The first is to emphasize these aren't automatic products. These aren't products that we've built and we're launching. They're extensions that exist in the ecosystem anyway. Merchants are choosing to use already. It's definitely awkward timing, but I think the principles still stand up, and the partners that we've selected and the way that we've chosen to approach making people aware of the opportunity and challenges and the questions that they should ask and be aware of are important to do. And this is a multi-year, long-term technology trend. So as a micro, it might feel a little bit ouchy to do it with this backdrop. But as I said, I think it just makes it more important than ever that we are doing our best to help educate merchants who are already going to be using these tools to make the right decisions and to be aware of the implications. I think I don't want to give too much airtime to individuals, but this is far from the first time that massive financial fraud has been perpetrated in highly regulated environments. the Bernie Madoff Ponzi scheme was like 50 billion or something, so even bigger than FTX, and this is like a long time ago. I do agree that everyone seems to have fallen under a spell with SBF. And, you know, without getting political, it does definitely feel like a bit of a failure of regulation that, for example, when Coinbase tried to launch the same products or equivalent products as FTX, they were blocked by doing so from US regulators. Those same regulators were extremely weak at enforcing any action against FTX. So, you know, these are products that consumers wanted. They were accessible through a very well-known corporation, you know, just a short flight away from the US, with the founder operating in the open, and yet no action was taken to protect US retail, no real action. So I don't know that regulation is always the answer, because again, like regulation is always subject to politics and people, and yeah, I mean, it does in retrospect. I mean, I can't believe he managed to pull it all off. I mean, it's just like,
Exactly.
it's incredible. I mean, do you ever read the author Michael Lewis? He wrote Moneyball and Flash Boys and Liar's Poker.
Flash Boys, I've read Flash Boys. I'm talking about it like every time I have a chance, because this is for those who didn't read it. It's a history of
high frequency trading.
Exactly, and front running orders, and the whole US market of stock exchanges were affected by this, and the stock exchanges were providing procedures, like specially designed procedures to enable high frequency traders to benefit from knowing about the incoming trades and making profit or not off of it, like fractions of a percent, but very, very high frequency. It was building huge wealth without the high frequency traders owning any stock at the end of the trading day. So they started with zero and ended with zero, making millions on this high frequency trading. And to give you a perspective, there were like some exchanges were providing 70 to 80 calls. So not only sell, buy, stop loss and so on, you can think of, but 70 like very complicated and sophisticated logical arguments. If this and this under this amount of time, do this. And this was designed to those who were benefiting from this. I can ramble on about this for a day.
So you should definitely read all his other books. The Big Short was maybe.
Yeah, I read it too. Exactly.
But it turns out like he was following SBF around for the last 6 months. So like, I'm just holding on for this book because it's going to be.
All right.
This story is not over yet, and I think it's going to be a bit of a wild ride of a story as well. But, let's just bear in mind, this is financial crime. It's whatever it is, it's not what the crypto industry is about. It's how people abuse the crypto industry, and there are definitely challenges within the crypto industry which have made it easier for him to get away with doing this stuff, or allegedly get away with doing this stuff. But it's not the vision, it's not the goals, and in fact, it definitely underlines the importance of not trusting people and corporations and regulators, or at least not being forced to. But yeah, I mean, how he managed to beguile investors, like almost everyone, into thinking that what was going on was like totally fine, is just absolutely bonkers. But it's also, it's adjacent to crypto. It's not crypto.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. We have to remember this is not crypto per se. It's like you said, Web 2.5, which is taking crypto but running this as an old-fashioned business with all of the problems of a person going rogue, running the company.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. I hope we could end this on a more positive note. But
I think we can. You know,
exactly.
This is this sort of washout and these sorts of lessons. All right, so like my take on this is, and people often ridicule crypto for like relearning the lessons of traditional finance. You know, lessons that were learned 100 years ago. And in the example of FTX, like not running a proprietary trading shop and an exchange, you know, that's just a massive conflict of interest structurally. And that was regulated against in the US in the 20s, like the 1920s. So, you know, these are old lessons that the industry seems to be relearning. But the point is that we are relearning them in the open together and implementing open, transparent solutions to those. So we're designing in the open, and that keeps, I think if you believe in open source, then you have to believe that that is the way to build resilient systems. So running a WordPress agency for years, I often used to hear like, oh, you know, WordPress is insecure or it's got loads of bugs or whatever. But A, that became untrue pretty quickly. And B, it's easy to find fault in what's laid open. But it's impossible to do the same thing for proprietary code and proprietary platforms. That doesn't mean that those same vulnerabilities or issues don't exist. It's just that like nobody has found them yet, or at least like the fact that they are present is not widely known. You know, there are significant challenges within the traditional finance industry as well. You know, they have massive cybersecurity challenges. There's card skimming, there is hacking, there is all sorts of financial like challenges there too. And so the way that I look at some of these very difficult lessons that we're learning in crypto is the same as like waking up and your WordPress site is hacked. You know, it's bad, but you learn, you fix, and you move on. And over time, the system gets more resilient. And I think that's, you know, that's the optimistic and positive and constructive way to look at this stuff, is not taking things for granted and understanding that this is, you know, it's a wildly difficult undertaking to build an alternative financial system, but that it's also critically important for many people around the world that it does happen, because often commentators are looking from the security of the EU or the US, and they don't experience the same challenges around capital controls or currency devaluation or inflation that people in other countries do. And so they don't have the same pressure on them to find alternative ways to preserve their wealth and preserve their ability to transact. And ultimately, I believe that trade is what helped humans go beyond being hunter-gatherers, right? It was essential that I could trade you a deer today and you would give me some fish next month. And that's where money and money came from. It's, you know, at least one of the theories is that it's, you know, a store of value over time or a way to transact. And as we enter this like exponential new age, like we didn't even touch on AI, right? Like, so how people can trust each other now is problematic. How they can trust each other when AI technologies really come online, that's a whole new kettle of fish. But
challenge, yeah.
Yeah, in this increasingly technological and exponential age, the need for a financial system which is resilient and open and transparent and composable with the rest of our lives just seems like a really important mission to go after, to preserve that freedom to transact, to build connections between people regardless of location or time or political belief or regulation. just seems important.
Exactly. Yeah. Thank you very much for your take. And if our listeners would like to help you or Automatic on this mission, is there anything you're looking for, like any help, like 2 minutes to pitch for something, Dave?
Yeah, you can find me, contact me, dave.lockie, that's Lockie, at automatic.com, that's 2 T's in Automatic. Pleased to hear from you. If you hate everything that I've said, if you love everything that I said, you've got a project that you think that we should be paying attention to for the future, you've got a project that you think we should be paying attention to right now. I definitely don't want anyone listening to this to come away with the impression that I think I know everything about this space. I'm just trying to keep my mind open, learn and share what I learn as I go along. It's a very complex, very fast-moving space, and I think it's important. So if you share that view, then let's talk.
Thank you very much, Dave. It was a pleasure to have this talk with you, and see you next time, maybe.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity, Maciej.
If you like what you've just heard, don't forget to subscribe for more episodes. On the other hand, if you've got a question we haven't answered yet, feel free to reach out to us directly. Just go to awesomestudio.com/contact. Thanks for listening, and see you in the next episode of the Awesome to Know podcast.